thank you to be here today with us. I hope all of you took your morning coffee because we are going to need some of your energy here today. So we are going to be talking about adding physics to our Flutter application. Isn't it cool, Alejandro?
Yeah, very cool. Let's see what we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm Jaime Blasco. I'm a Flutter GD and also like work in Very Good Ventures. What about you?
Yeah, I'm Alejandro. I also work at Very Good Ventures, and it's a pleasure to be here today. I'm an active contributor to Pinball, Flame, and Force2D. So yeah.
Yeah. So how can we add physics to our application? My only idea would be like to create a package from scratch. We love that, all of us, and then publish in PubDev. Is a good idea?
I mean, it's an idea. You can build your own physics engine. However, it's sometimes an even better idea to have a look at what has been already made for us. So, do you remember Angry Birds?
Yeah, I play a lot when I was a child.
Yeah. So Angry Birds is like really cool game, and apparently it used a thing called Box2D for the physics engine. And as you can see, it has a bunch of like moving things. There's gravity, there's collisions, and a lot of things going around. So this Box2D thing is the physics engine, and it's written in C++ by a guy called Erin. However, in Flutter, we usually deal with Dart code, and the most up-to-date port of Box2D is Force2D. And as you guessed it, the physics engine, as well as Box2D, is two-dimensional. So it is no 3D stuff, only 2D. And in this case, it's written in Dart, and it's maintained by the Flame engine, of which we have one of the members of the team up in the audience. So that's super nice. Anyways, so
Yeah, but it's super easy. Like just we add the first 2D into a Flutter app, but we need something else.
well, Force2D is only the simulation of things. So it's just the physics engine. So there's nothing actually being rendered by Force2D. It's also pure Dart, so it has nothing to do with Flutter. However, we can use Flame, which is short for Flutter and Game, to have the power of Flutter to render stuff. And to combine them both, we're going to be using Flame Force2D. So it's like a bridge package that's going to help us and simplify a little bit the connection between these two.
Okay, but how can we? I mean, it seems it's still a bit abstract. So, do you have any use case or idea that we can get like to show to the audience?
I mean, I've always been wondering what's the favorite Flutter widget of the community.
Yeah, I think it's good. Okay, let's do that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome today to the biggest competition of droidcon London. We are going to choose our favorite widget. So please, everyone, take out your phones, scan this QR code. We are going to show a demo, and everyone is going to be able to pick his favorite widget.
Yeah, hopefully it works. So
Yeah,
haven't tested that
we
much.
just commit the last commit today in a few
Yeah.
5 minutes, so I hope we work.
yeah, should be fun.
So let's go to the website. Everyone can see like this is like a simple button that says add my widget, and it displays a dialog or a button sheet where you can like, my favorite widget is going to be sliver list today. So I click here and we'll see it appear on the screen. So if you have any problems, try to refresh. I hope that works. So we can see a lot of widgets already appearing, like we have card, page view, animated container. To make it more tight, like what we can do right now is like you can click in your favorite widget, and it will keep growing. So we have page view.
Refresh.
Yeah.
Ah.
No. We only display the ones in the Flutter website. Yeah, there's a lot more widgets, but we can remove them.
I'm so sorry.
So we can see like Flutter logo is winning there, but yeah, for example, someone is clicking sliver list. It's
Yeah,
not
so
me.
just tap really hard and yours should increase the size. Also, you can drag them around.
I say you can drag them around and you will see like they interact to each other and then they will come back to the center. So I think it's good. Like, let's try to build this today. We're going to call it bubble chart, okay? So let's try to build our bubble chart today.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll see who actually won at the end. So cool stuff. So just to get started, we're going to be talking a little bit about Force2D. It's on the earliest version, so it's 0.11, really young still. So if you want to contribute and find this interesting, feel free. So let's see how it works. So as we already said, it's a physics engine, and we have a world. So we live in a world, and it's, as we already discussed, it's two-dimensional. So we have a grid, X and Y. It can also go negative, and well, it's quite boring if we just have a world. So we can add things to our world, and the things that we can add, for example, are bodies. So they are called bodies. Bodies can be anything. They can be a ball. They can be a car, as we see here. They can be what you can think. However, it's important to notice that Force2D doesn't do any rendering stuff. So although we have a cool emoji over here, it doesn't care about how cool it is, but it does care about the shape it has. So in order to define the shape of our body, we're going to be using something called fixtures, and the fixtures are going to define physical properties and the shape. Force2D has some built-in shapes. In this case, it has the circle, a polygon, edge, and chain. And we only need some circle shapes to represent the fixtures of our wheels and some polygons to represent the actual body of our car. They can have individual properties. So for example, we can add some friction to the front wheel, some friction to the back wheel, and no friction to the body itself. A body with multiple fixtures is considered a composite body. And we are nearly there. The only thing we have left to do is actually add our body to the world. So what we can do is give it a position, add it to the world, and there it is, our car. It looks quite interesting, although a single body might look a little bit boring. So what other bodies can we add?
So we can have different type of bodies, no? Like, let's start with the most basic one, that is the static body. So the static body is not affected by gravity or any other physics, and it doesn't depend on his mass. So it's like, just stay still. So we are adding a floor to our world, for example, that's going to be a road. Then we have the dynamic bodies that, as we mentioned before, it can be our car. So our car is affected by gravity, and it will also like collide with other kind of objects, like the static or dynamic, and then it will interact with them. So for example, if we play our simulation, the car will fall down the hill. So we also have another type of body type that is called kinematic. We're not going to be covering this today because it's rarely used, but just to make it a brief explanation about it, is like it's not affected by gravity, but you can define a normal velocity to it, and then it will just move. So for example, we add a cloud into our game that it just does nothing itself. It's just in the background. So how can we move, like, how can we make progress of this simulation? Like, we're going to define different states, no? So we have our first step where the car is very still, and then we want to move to the next step. So how we do that? Like, how do we do that? So we call a step method in the world. So we call step, and then we pass the difference in time between the first step and the second step. So to move to the next state, we just call step. And we keeps calling the step like in an endless loop. That was like it's called simulation loop. I think that we're covered with, no?
Yeah, pretty cool. So we've done a little bit of overview of Force2D. There's like more things you can do over there, like joints and other crazy stuff. But it's sufficient for our demonstration. So we're gonna talk a little bit about Flame. Flame is a little bit mature. It's in version 1, and hopefully we have version 2 coming soon. But just let's get started, and we're gonna be talking a little bit about the Flutter world right now. So this you're probably really familiar with this composition. We have a run app, which is the function that's going to run our actual application, and we're going to be passing a game widget. The game widget comes from Flame, and it's going to be asking us for a game. So how can we make a game? We can define our bubble chart, and we can extend Flame game and pass it over there. If we look at the screen that's being rendered, it's black. It's not really useful, though. So we can change the background color, for example, and just make it a little bit white. And there you go. Cool animation there, huh? So it's a little bit white, although most of us are already able to paint white applications over there. So if we want to add some things to the screen, what we can do is define components. So in Flutter, we have widgets. In Flame, we have components. Components do have a life cycle. They are kind of similar to the state of a stateful widget. And in this case, we're going to be using the onload method, which is similar to the init method, but it's only being called because it's only being called once. So in this onload method, since it's only being called once, we can add things to it. And in this case, we're going to define our bubble component. And if we see what's being rendered, it's absolutely nothing because we haven't created our bubble component just yet.
So let's create our bubble component. Our bubble component, like to create whatever component, it's super easy. You just have to extend the component class. For example, here we are going to use the pre-built position component that's going to allow us to position our component inside our game. So the same as before, we are going to use the onload method to add more components inside. What we needed for our bubble? We needed a circle, no? So it's pretty basic. We use the pre-built component that is called circle component. So we will add a child that is called circle component with a defined radius and a color of blue.
That's my favorite color, by the way.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I knew you like it. So we have the top left. We can see that our bubble is aligned in the top left of our screen because every component, by default, in the position component, his origin is top left. What we want to do is to center the child into the parent. To do that, we use a very, it's very straightforward. We use the anchor method, like parameter. So we are going to use anchor center, and it will align the child, the origin of the child to the origin of the parent. Right now, the origin of the parent by default is 0, 0. But we can also modify that. We are going to modify that in the constructor. So we are going to define a vector of 50, 50. And that casually is going to be the center of screen for this example. Very convenient. So we can also add more components inside. We also needed a text, no? So we are going to use the pre-built component. It's called text component. So for that, we pass a string as a parameter. Then we also anchor it to a center, and then we define some properties for the rendering. Here we are here we are going to use the text style from Flutter to define some text styling. I think it's looking better, no?
It's definitely looking better. However, like as I said, most of us are able to draw some circles on screen. So can we add some movement to these things?
Yes, let's make it move. So as Flutter, we usually are very used to update our state in the state class by calling setState when we want, like when we change some properties. But Flame is kind of different. Flame, it works like a usual game engine that is constantly updating. So what we want to do is like when it updates, it change the state, and then it will keep updating. So we have,
Yeah, I mean, just saying, like, we need to be really, really careful what we do on the update method because it's being called a bunch of times. Because, a lot of times. We first call update, and then we call render, and then we go update again, and then we go render again, update, render, update, render.
I think you got it.
Exactly. So be careful.
Yeah. What we are going to do is to change the position. So we have the position parameter here that is not immutable. Like, as you can see, it's not immutable. Like we can change it. So because like in Flutter, we are used to using immutable objects, but here in Flame, like as more performant, we are going to use mutable ones. So here we change the position, and as soon as we start the simulation, our widget will go to the right, like our component.
Yeah, bye-bye. It went really far away. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're just nearly there. Regarding Flame, something we need to consider is the component tree. So similar to Flutter that we have our widget tree, in Flame we have our component tree. And in this case, so far we've built this component tree. We have the game, we have the bubble component, and bubble component has two children, which is the circle and the text component. We can traverse this tree at any given point in time, and we're gonna be having a look later on how can we do this. Yeah. So now you can do more things with Flame, but it's just enough for us to get the showcase showing up. So we can talk about Flame Force 2D for a little bit. So in order to use Flame Force 2D, you can depend on Flame Force 2D, and you don't need to depend on Force 2D because it automatically exports it for you. Okay? It's really young as well, so feel free to contribute. Anyways, so how can we actually add Force 2D to our game? So the first thing, we need to update our subclass. So instead of subclassing Flame game, what we're gonna do is subclass our Force 2D game. Force 2D game is a subclass of Flame game, so that's why our game widget doesn't actually complain because it's receiving a game. Cool. It does a little bit more, so it does have a world. It updates the world for us, and so forth. Cool. Now we're nearly there. So before we had a position component, which basically is a component with a position. Now we want to have a body component, which is a component that has a body. There we go. And when we do so, it's going to be yelling at us to implement our create body. And hopefully we are already familiar with this as we discussed in the previous. So what we're going to do is actually create our body and add it to the world. So first of all, it's a circle. So let's add a circle. And the shape we're going to be using is a circle shape, and we give it some radius. Then we're going to be defining our fixture. In this case, we're going to be using a fixture definition. And the fixture definition is nearly a fixture. It's just a description of the fixture. So we can add the shape to the fixture, and we can also add physical properties. In this case, we're adding some density. Cool. And now we're just nearly there. We need our body definition. So we just define our body. We make sure it's dynamic. So it actually, gravity affects our body. And we can also give it some position. In this case, 200, 200, a really cool number. And we're nearly there. And the last thing is adding all this to the world. So the body component has access to the world. And what we can do is create it, pass the body definition, and then create the fixture, and pass the fixture definition. And now we have a body in our world with a fixture. Yeah?
Nice, yeah.
So let's see what happens.
So if everything goes right, like by default, our first 2D game is going to have some gravity by default. And the simulation is kind of the same as the real world, they will have gravity going down. So as soon as we play our app, it should go down, yes. So we can play a bit more with it. We can add another body, like another component that is going to be a body component, but instead of being dynamic, it's going to be static. So as soon as we play our app, the body will go down, the ball, and then we'll collide with it and will stop. But
Yeah, I mean, in real life, things don't look that way. Usually, when I throw something downwards, it like kind of bounces a little bit until it stops the motion.
yeah, I got that one for you. So we also add more fixtures to it. There's a lot of properties, but this one we are going to mention today is called restitution. What it does is defines the bounciness of our component, like of our fixture. So as soon as we throw out the ball, it's going to bounce a bit until it stops. We also can modify a lot of things to make it funnier. So we can change the gravity of our all game. That's very easy. We go to the flame game and we change the property that's called gravity. But here we need something more customizable. So we are going to define a custom gravity for just our bubble component. We are going to do this in the load, so it's only called once. We define we call the gravity override, and we define our gravity is going to go up. So as soon as we play our game, the ball is going to go up. But that's not what we need for our example. Again. So for example, we need all the balls trying to go to the center. So we are going to do a small calculation on our update method. That is when it calls update, we are going to get the real position of the bubble at that moment, and we are going to modify the gravity around it. So we just get the center of our game, and then we define gravity override between the difference of our center and our position. So the farther it is from the center, the more gravity we'll have, and as soon as it gets closer to the center, it will have less gravity until it reaches 0. So let's say on an example, as soon as we play our app, it will try to go to the center. But let's try to add more balls. So we have our first 2D game. You remember we use an add for a bubble component, but we are just going to use add all. So add all is just a method that allows you to add iterable of components, and we'll add all together as children. So we have 2 bubble components. You can see here we define 2 parameter a constructor. One is one name for defining a custom name for each bubble, and then the initial position, the position of all of them. So as soon as we play our game, the app, it will go, both balls will try to go to the center, and as soon as they hit, they will stop. Because in this example, we are not using restitution, as we mentioned before. So I think we're almost there, no?
Almost there. If you remember in our sample, we were reacting to gestures such as tapping, so we can include that. So one of the things that we need to do to actually introduce taps is have a mixin applied to our first 2D game, and it has tappable. This comes from Flame, and then we need to update our component to also be able to receive tappable events. So we just apply a mixin and has tappable over there, and now we're nearly there. So this gives us access to override some of the methods, and in particular, we can override on tap down, and whoop, there you go, on tap down. And now this is where we need to update our component itself. So there are 2 things we need to update. First, like the shape of, like the rendering part of this body. So what we can do is we can traverse the tree by accessing the children and grabbing the circle component, and then just a little bit like increasing the radius of this. So as you can see now, if you tap it, we increase the radius. However, this is only visual. We need to update also like the body around it, so we can accept hitbox. Like you can think of it like as the hitbox, so it actually collides. So what we're gonna do is access the shape from our fixture and include and make it match the radius of our second component. And now if we tap it, it's gonna look the same. However, when it's going to be colliding with other balls, the actual collisions are going to be reasonably decent. So this will get us to this thing over here.
Yeah, so as we can see here, like we got all what we needed. We have all the balls trying to go to the center by gravity, and then as soon as you click one, it will keep growing, and then the others will interact with it. As we haven't covered that. So yeah, I think we got everything we needed here. So we are going to try to recap what we have learned today. So we understood what the concept of world, body, and fixtures are in Force 2D. Then we create a simple game from scratch with Flame, and we add multiple components into it. Then we change these components to be body components, and we modify the properties, like the physics property it has, like gravity, density, or restitution. And then finally, we learn how to use mixins to extend the behavior of our components, like for example, when we use tappable with tap components.
Okay, so in the actual demonstration, we use more things. So one of the things that we were using was Firebase to connect everything up. Then we were also using Flame Block. So Block is a state management solution for, well, it doesn't need to be Flutter, but it's a state management solution. So that's we were using the Flame Block to actually bridge the gap between the Flutter application and our actual demonstration. Then we were using a pattern, which is like behavioral pattern. You can look at Flame behaviors. It's a package maintained by VGV, and you can see how to actually scale your game a little bit further. We use the draggable mixin, so it's really similar to the tappable one, but in this case, you can drag it around. The content callback mixin, so in Force2D, you can actually detect collisions and so forth. So the contact callbacks allowed us to do that. And we also played a little bit with the flame camera zoom to actually get it looking as we want it to. There's more things you can keep learning. And how can you do that? First of all, you can check the Discord. The Flame community is really open and really helpful. So if you have any questions and so forth, you can go to the Discord channel and just pop a question. In terms of documentation, you can look at the Flame documentation and also Box2D documentation. So for example, if you want to learn about joints and actually make the wheels of your car actually rotate as a proper wheel, you can research a little bit more. And in terms of projects that you want to see, you can start by looking at the Pong, which is like really simple game. Maybe we all know about it. And then there's also Very Good Ranch and the Flutter IO pinball, which all use Flame as well. And the pinball uses a lot of Force2D.
Good. So thank you everyone for coming. I hope you all find it interesting. I don't know if you have time for questions, but otherwise, please, if you can reach us whatever, we are going to be all day here. And then otherwise, you can reach us on Twitter or following on GitHub for our work. And that will be it. Thank you so much. The question was if we remember the game was very popular before, that it was like maybe we got inspired for the bubbles. I don't think.
The main inspiration, I think we can say that. The main inspiration is from the Apple. So in the Apple Music, they had like a selection menu where they had some physics involved in it. And basically in Apple Music, you could also like listen to swipe detections and things like that. And it was like really, it was a really nice user experience. But we actually forgot about to check the most popular widget.
Ah, right.
Yeah. Hopefully it didn't crash. There you go.
Hey, when you crash, you are.
There you go. So the notification listener is, we don't see it there, but the notification listener is the actual winner of the competition. Yeah. A big clap for the notification listener. Yeah, anyways. Any more questions?
What's the name of the game?
Yeah, that one. Yeah, you can actually make them. Yeah. Yeah. And you then have Leader IO as well. Yeah, I remember that.
Okay. Thank you.
That was it?
Yeah.
Awesome.